good live feed. Apparently, we have one of those now. So I'm here with Ian McCarter. Am I pronouncing your name right?
Perfect.
Ian is in Guatemala right now, where they're having a big conference. I thought it was really strange that so many people were in Guatemala, and it just seemed like a really strange coincidence. But it turns out there is a conference about this kind of thing in Guatemala right now, because it's an Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation that is there, isn't it? You said,
Yeah, they
Ian.
have a Guatemala chapter that
There you
hosts
go.
the specific conference. Yeah.
So that makes sense. So first of all, you're coming up this Friday, so you're quite soon, Friday the 14th. And in the UK, Greenwich Mean Time, 11:30 at night. So get your cocoa, get your pajamas on and
Mm,
settle in with Ian. It's a bit intimate. I've just made the offer there for you, Ian. I hope you don't mind.
that's great. I
Um,
love the cocoa idea.
he looks like a nice kind of guy. I'm sure he won't mind. What is your time zone, Ian?
Pacific Standard Time, so we'll be in California
Pacific.
at the time.
So you'll be 3:30 in California till 4:30.
Hmm.
And I'm sure Ian won't mind you joining him in your pajamas if you are in California. Right. Let's move on and tell people what you're doing. So, you would be, if you're joining Ian, you will be hearing something really astonishing and lovely and exciting, and I know you're going to love it. And what the title of the session is called Beauty from Ashes: Art as a Pathway Through Grief. So that's what you're looking for. And I'm going to give people just a quick outline of what that session is about before I get you to introduce yourself more fully. Beauty from Ashes. So it's a art as a pathway through grief explores how creative expression can help transform loss into meaning. And there's a lot of current research around this at the moment,
Hmm.
how helpful that is. So through the Ash Rose project, which is Ian's project, I think it's a collaboration, but we'll get onto that. Artist and hospice nurse Ian McCarter, this person you see before you, creates portraits infused with the ashes of loved ones. So you're taking the ashes of the people that you love and you're making art from it, and which I think is profound and beautiful and very surprising.
Hmm.
Although people have been doing tattoos a little bit lately. So
Right.
turning the remnants of loss into living symbols of remembrance, peace, and beauty. This session will share stories from the project, reflect on art as a companion in grief, and invite participants to consider how creativity can open new pathways of healing for themselves and their communities, importantly, which is lovely. Now, I've got loads of stuff here about you, but enough from me. Let's hear you introduce yourself because people will be fed up with my voice by now, especially with this cold. So, introduce yourself if you wouldn't mind.
Well, thank you. That was a lovely synopsis of this project, and it is very unique in the sense of the invitation for people to surrender something so precious. You know, these ashes to us are the most precious material that we have. You know, I feel more than gold because it is us, and it's a meditation of our short time here while we're living, and then what we leave behind, physically and metaphorically, for those that have to say goodbye. And so, I started this work 5 years ago after a number of years working in hospice. It was um, a long time practice of art before I was a nurse, actually. So I was first an artist and then became a hospice nurse. And then um, I was always searching for a way to serve with purpose, with this craft of evoking beauty or this sense of life through the craft of art. And my mother had this wonderful idea one day, and I was creating portraits by commission that were remembrance oriented. You know, people were sending me photographs of people that they'd lost, and they're like, I love a drawing of my mother or my grandmother or anybody, and my mom just downloaded this incredible idea that changed everything. It completely changed the context and the meaning and the involvement of this art that that then became a whole new way of allowing people to connect not only through the art but the process into the art. And so what we do now, we have a nonprofit organization. It's 501c3 called the Ash Rose Foundation, and the project that supports the grief counseling and the portrait creation and the community events is called the Ash Rose Project. And so we've been doing that for exactly a year as a nonprofit. And so each month
So
we've
it's
worked with an
fresh.
individual. Yeah, and it's a beautiful way to do it, because before, finances were always an issue with people in a compromised loss situation. You know, many times they'd want to participate, but finances were so tight. And just personally, I hated getting money involved in this directly with the person receiving the service if it was to be a hindrance. And so with that, we're able to offer this service completely for free for people. And so we only work with one person a month. It's very, you know, focused scale. And with that, um, we start by having a conversation about what elements were most meaningful for that loved one. And it's usually a combination of photographs that, you know, hold certain expressions or periods of time, and other elements like environments, like specific oceans or a mountain valley that was unique to that person's story, or it was their childhood home or something like that. And then other icons of symbolism, like animals that make that connection for people after the loss, like butterflies, dragonflies, hummingbirds, you know, these very specific little messengers that we're able to weave into this composition. And after that conversation, we have a pretty good idea of what the thematic elements of that composition will be. And then they provide a small amount of the ashes. We don't use all of them. And it depends, typically just depending on the scale of the art piece, but usually it's no more than a tablespoon. And over the course of that month, I'm a certified grief counselor as well, so there's a very specific journaling pathway through this that we provide, that each week supports a different focus of the journey in the relationship of the loss. And so as the art's being created, they're taken through a pretty deep, intimate reflection period that connects them to things that they many times wouldn't have explored otherwise, you know, through more traditional means. And I feel that courage that they exhibit as this project takes form and comes to life, essentially, it's this deep spiritual and emotional healing that comes through when this art's being created with, you know, the preciousness of these ashes. And then at the end of the 30 days, after we meet every week, we organize a gathering for the unveiling and the presentation. And usually it's a big family event where people bring, you know, people fly in for it and come, and we do it at a special location, or we do it at their home in their living room, or at the grave side of them. And it just really becomes this something to look forward to also. You know, it's this creative outcome that gives a sense of hope and meaning after such a difficult and painful, potentially, endeavor. And
So that's
you know,
beautiful. Sorry, carry on.
it's yeah, and it's a beautiful way to have multiple family members contribute and be involved. You know, I usually work with multiple family members at once, and they all contribute to the journaling, and then in the sessions we go over the questions, and we storytell, and we really lift the lid on something that proverbially tends to be kept on the shelf or in the closet and hidden many times. And this is a way to bring it forth in a completely different way and allow for this symbolic transformation to take place within them, and then for them to have this tangible presence that reminds them of all this that they poured themselves into, and allow that to be a talking point, you know, to speak and to remember and to share these people that they've loved and continue to love, and these gifts that they continue to carry forward with them in their lives, that many times it's hard to share because you don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable or make them feel sad by bringing up the death of a loved one. And this allows for not the death but the life to come forward as forefront in that storytelling. And beyond the individual service, we do community gallery events to where we invite everyone who's participated to come and bring their portrait. And we curate a space where everyone can present their art, meet each other, see each other's artwork, and connect in this immediate way in a very special witness, and allow the community to come and bear witness to this topic that tends to be so frightening for us in this modern world. You know, this idea of death um, can be a very intimidating subject and painful to approach. But I feel allowing the art and the willingness of these stories to come forth through these people, it allows for such a frightening topic to be approached with gentleness and beauty and hope and acceptance, because we can't run. we can't hide for too long from this inevitable presence that, if kept at arm's length, remains frightening because it's unknown and it's not a friend at the table. But in this way, it's a way to witness what it has to teach us, and really what it informs about life. And from what we found in these experiences is that these moments of loss are potentially the most profoundly transformative that we'll ever be able to experience in our lives, because it completely changes our perspective on our own lives and what we leave behind and how we live every day. And so there's many layers, and it's an old simple thing to create art, and we like to share this idea with different industries that are looking for innovation, you know, because this isn't a new idea necessarily. You know, this is taking what was always there and putting it together in a way that speaks to our modern culture, and I think in a very tangible and in a needed way. Because as we know, you know, there's just this push for technology and rapidity and swiftness. And I think, coming from a nursing and counseling practice, the speed and the pace and the shallowness doesn't help the healing. It's the slowness and the intimacy and the focus and the willingness to create and invest your time and your life and your courage and creative thinking into something that, you know, it's kind of opposite of where the narrative of our, you know, our technological revolution is going, you know. But I think that it's a balance, and we need things to slow us down and to remind us of the natural process of growth. You know, we look to nature and we see the time it takes for a rose to bloom. It takes a season, and it's not an instant fix. And by no means are people completely healed by the end of this creative process by the time they receive their art, but it is a marking in time. You know, it is a milestone, a tangible reminder of progress, and a way for them to step into a role of service, you know, to contribute with your story and your pain allows you to experience this compassion that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And that is the real gift, to be able to see another in a depth that would have been inaccessible otherwise.
I feel very inadequate to this task, honestly. I feel very emotionally overwhelmed by what you're sharing. It's so beautiful, and it is such an antidote to the world of AI and the world of distanced gatherings and the world of dehumanization and fascism and far-right politics and all the horrors of our age. To hear a person commit their life to healing and tenderness moves me very profoundly. And because I'm a celebrant, I work a lot with process ahead of time. And obviously there's often a concern that there isn't, the thing that happens next doesn't always happen. And in our country at the moment, and I think this is happening in the US as well, where people are increasingly having direct cremations because it's just the way it's going. And I think what people don't understand is that it doesn't have to be, you do the thing, the cremation takes place, nobody's there, and that's it. You don't have to do anything ever again.
Mm,
even if you wanted to, you can't because the moment has passed. There's this kind of obsession with things have to happen in the moment with the body.
mm,
And as I'm listening to you, you're kind of redressing some kind of balance and giving me a sense of, I mean, not only redressing the balance in terms of the frenetic pace of life and the understanding that grief won't happen like this, even though we want it to, but also redressing for me a sense of sadness and loss of my own, that my own art and skill is no longer really valued in terms of processing ahead of time, ahead of the grief, the
mm,
funeral. But also, you and I know what happens if we don't do some kind of healthy process. You're in the institute at the moment, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I can't even say that, Kubler-Ross Institute right now, or the foundation, the chapter. So it's all about that, isn't it? It's all about process and emotional health and moving on and healing. There's very little discourse in my culture around what's going to happen if we don't do that stuff. So
mm,
having an option for people where it's art and you're painting or you're creating with someone a work of art, which then you celebrate in community later on, seems like such a great way of addressing our current way of thinking. It's beautiful. I just feel very moved to hear your story.
thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any
That's
examples of people you've worked with?
I do actually, and I there's one that we just presented in Maryland. We went and we were nominated to work with a particular participant in this community bereavement service called Roberta's House, and they serve the Baltimore community over on the eastern part of our country, and so it was nice to to connect with them remotely. At first, it was totally online that we were able to acquaint ourselves with each other's offerings essentially, and the director of that project mentioned that she hosts for all the mothers that had lost infants in that community as an event of remembrance called the Angelversary that they have every year. And essentially, there was this one woman who had lost her child several years ago at the age of 3 days, and it was very tragic for her and her whole family. And she had moved through that into community service in a very special way that exemplified the possibility of how serving with pain allows for meaning to take place, and she just really embraced that. And so she actually ended up losing her husband less than a year ago also, and so she was left with these 4 children under the age of 12 and these multiple compounding losses, and yet she still chose to serve through these vehicles of her community. And so she was nominated to participate through the Ash Rose Project a month before the Angelversary. And so what she chose to do, it was involve her children in the journaling process of creating this artwork. And so every week when we met, she would share the notes you know, of the journaling questions that she put on the kitchen refrigerator for the kids to see. And the kids were like age 6, 8, and 11, and I think 12 as well. And so young, very vulnerable ages of approaching this loss. And according to her, that the creative outcome that they were able to know they were influencing with their contributions was a very exciting and hopeful thing for them to do. They were able to share notes and memories and certain little things that reminded them of their little brother and their father, and know that it was going to appear in some way in this portrait later down the line. And according to her, it was all they were talking about for the whole month. And so there was this real communion between the family at the time of the year mark of that father's passing, or his and his first birthday had occurred over that time of the the uh, the journaling. So they were able to come to these very difficult first days, these first birthdays, these first holidays, these first traditions that are now without that loved one. And it's a very hard time. And so it was interesting timing. Some of that was completely unplanned, that just ended up going that way. Um, but it was able to involve children in grieving and facing it with the parents, and for that to be affirmed and not pushed to the side or distracted or said that no, it's not okay for a child to be exposed to this pain or this loss. It is part of their lives, and they need to be involved. And if they're not, then we're doing them an incredible disservice, and they're gonna suffer for it, psychologically and emotionally later down the line. So much unprocessed pain. And so on that day of the Angelversary, we all flew over to Maryland, and the community of mothers and their families that were served throughout the years were able to be present. And so everyone in that room had common ground. And this woman and her children were able to stand in front of the room and just stand as everyone bore witness to who they were and what they were being celebrated for. And we were able to present the portrait and unveil it there at that event in front of everyone. And just to see the expressions on the children's faces especially was such a moment, because they were able to step into that and trust it, and then to receive a reflection of that was just such a beautiful moment. And the youngest, actually, she looked the most like her father, I noticed. She took the artwork and she just held on to it for like the next hours. And then she wouldn't let go. She's like, nope, I've got daddy, I've got baby brother. I'm keeping them safe right now. And so like through the whole rest of the event, she was just like clinging to this portrait. And then, it just was so sweet to see that. And how something that perhaps would have been frightening, the ashes. Don't touch the ashes. Keep the ashes on the shelf. Don't knock over the vase, careful, where many times children find the ashes very frightening, very uncomfortable, and very luminous or ominous. And, they want to stay away from them, and perhaps stay away from that memory, stay away from that pain. It was beautiful to see the embrace and the preciousness. She held onto that frame like it was the most important thing to her in that moment. And when I saw that, I saw that is a potential for that relationship to be maintained as precious in that same regard, and how it's not something they will grow up staying away from, but they'll grow up for the rest of their childhoods intimate with it and connected to it, and these bonds can continue and become integrated into everyday life and not separated. I like to encourage a sense of continuation instead of closure. Closure seems to be such a word that we want, and it's like, just stop the pain, stop the thing, make it better, get me over this, let's find some closure here. And I think there is a place for certain kinds of closure, but I think as a main goal, I think we're a little off if we're desiring only closure, where I try to encourage continuation. It's bearing the burden with less weight. It's still there, the grief and the pain, because it's directly connected to love. It won't disappear. It's not going to just get better and get fixed and you're going to be fine. But it is something that you can learn to walk with and to see differently and to abide with differently. And I think that is something that we're able to really help. It's a step for people. And just like we're talking about, that tangibility is
making
very
it
visceral.
something very visceral, and also no longer entirely internal, because if you can externalize your grief, make it an object rather than just a nefarious thing that you can't find, it's
Right.
something really helpful that you can touch her grief and
Right.
see that. I mean, it's very lovely. I'm very into it. I think if you looked at the title is brilliant. But there's so many. If you're thinking of coming to Lifting the Lid and you want more of this, and you want to hear more about Ian's motivations, case histories, process, you can come and spend an hour with him, and you will hear way more than this. This is the tip of the iceberg. It always is with death work and bereavement work. And I think either there's, I mean, I don't know anyone that hasn't got some form of grief or loss, because that's the human condition. And if there's anyone that has any fresh grief or any very, very familiar grief, I think this is something for us, because we can think about how we can incorporate these concepts into our life, even if we're not doing this process actually with Ian. I'm kind of keen to know who finds you, and how, I mean, this woman was nominated, but how do people find you, and who gets to be chosen for the work?
The way we do it, it's very word of mouth, and it's very through these conferences that we speak at, through these podcasts, and we really don't have a very active social media presence. It's not really something that I feel is well served by a brief swipe. It's a much different kind of witness, and it's an older way of doing it. I think that long form time taken to just witness this thing. It's better served that way. And so we work with hospices, we work with death doulas, grief counselors, just directly with a lot of different communities that are doing the groundwork and are in the field. And a lot of word of mouth from previous participants also. They've benefited themselves from this work, and so they reach out to friends and family that also are suffering loss, and they refer and nominate, and it just starts with the conversation. And then we operate based on a waiting list, and so every person ahead of us from this current month, they're asked to donate a small amount to the nonprofit through our online platform, which then, I mean, even if it's a penny, that literally will get you into our database to be able to receive every participant's portrait and story via email every month. And so say someone's waiting several months to actually do the 30-day program with the artwork, they have the invitation to support the people before them and to witness them and to learn from them. And if there's a gallery event, to come and meet them. And as they're preparing all of these ideas and this emotional capacity to actually engage themselves with this process, they're able to see examples of the same intention. And it's a very expanding and helpful way to do it, because it also requires patience. You can't get it right away, and I think that there's such an important element there of being able to be patient and bear witness to another. And then in that, understand their role after they've completed this process, to then become a beacon for others, and to have understood that themselves from bearing witness to these other people. They know that by sharing their story, they will touch others and they will inspire. And so there's an instant connection to the role shift of the teacher and the example of what's required to heal, and the potential. And so it's a very simple system. And for members of the community who are interested in becoming a donor or a sponsor, it's a very easy process to become connected to the project through the website. And it's not all tangled up in the noise, which is great. But it's we're hopeful that through the years we can expand more internationally, because I think that message is so important as well. And this art has a capacity to show us that no matter where you are on this planet, we're going through the same human situation, and that unites us and that levels us, and that reminds us that we're all part of this road together. And as the world gets faster, we can slow down, and we can see each other, and we can participate in this experience of love and loss and life and death together. And I think that's the way it's meant to be.
I'm acutely aware that you're in the US at the moment, so that's having a profound effect on me hearing you speak as you are.
I'm actually in Guatemala. I'm in Antigua.
Well, you are now, but I mean, you're working in the US,
living
right?
in the US, yeah, correct.
Yeah, and that's your context, and you're speaking from that context, which is really, really lovely and touching. I feel like you hear so much news and so many noisy people and so much politics. And it can be easy to think, oh, the States is like that. And of course, first of all, the States is massive, but also there's people like you. And I think something about your work is focusing on the individual and the individual story, by at the same time talking about what you defined as common ground. If we only listen to headlines, we only listen to Donald Trump, we only listen to all the things, we're not hearing your voices, you see. And what I love about Lifting the Lid is that I get to hear your voice in among all of those very, very loud voices. There's this quiet voice of this person who's quietly subverting the system every day by building connection and community and common ground. And so I'm moved on a personal level because I have similar work and because I see you doing something that kind of circumvents the trend. But I'm moved, on a very, I don't know what the word is actually, like in a bigger way, because I'm not very often speechless, as anyone who watches me ever will know, but I am very, very moved by what you've shared, because it seems to me like there's still power. We still have power, that we are still empowered to love, and we are still empowered to heal, and we still have autonomy. And so a conversation like this with you in Guatemala and me in Brighton is what Lifting the Lid is all about, because we're not just talking about death, we're talking about global community, we're talking about connecting, we're talking about everyone and anyone having access to that kind of support and love. So call me an old hippie, but I think it's really beautiful. So I'm really grateful. I might have to stop actually, because I'm quite, I need to go away and digest this one, and I have someone else coming up, but I'm very delighted to have spent time with you and to have heard your story. I want everybody to come see you. So if you look at the program, everyone, there's loads more. And I might just have time actually to read your bio. And I think that might be quite helpful, because it gives people an understanding of how you've ended up where you are, because our histories are important. And so I'm going to read out what we have, and you can revisit this if you're not able to listen to this now. But Ian McCarter is an artist, hospice nurse, and founder of the Ash Rose. Have we read that bit? No, we haven't. Ash Rose Foundation. Drawing on years of bedside experience in end-of-life care, he blends compassion with creativity, as you have seen, to help individuals and families navigate loss. Through his work on the Ash Rose Project, which you can look up and it comes up quite quickly, the website's beautiful. It is true that you're not on socials. I have discovered this for myself. So look for the website first and foremost. Ian creates ash-infused memorial portraits that honour the lives of the departed and offer a space for the living to heal. There's those two things. His approach bridges the medical, emotional, and artistic dimensions of grief. Yeah, exactly. It's a very integrated practice, inviting people to find peace and beauty in remembrance. And it's interesting because it's Remembrance Day here in the UK, and that sort of is like perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, how do we remember? It's a whole other thing, isn't it? But how do we choose to memorialize? Maybe we should do something about that. About the Ash Foundation and the Ash Rose Project, the Ash Rose. Okay, about the Ash Rose Foundation and the Ash Rose Project. I can't get that out. The Ash Rose Project. The Ash Rose Foundation is a non-profit dedicated to supporting individuals and communities in their journey through grief by integrating art, remembrance, and healing. Its flagship initiative, the Ash Rose Project, brings together families, caregivers, and communities to create ash-infused portraits that transform loss into enduring works of beauty. Each piece tells a story of love, legacy, and resilience, offering both a personal tribute and a collective vision of healing through art. Learn more at theashrose.org. There you go. And we're looking at this Friday the 14th, Greenwich Mean Time, 11:30 at night until 12:30. And you are 3:30 till 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's right, isn't it? Pacific time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let you catch a plane, I think. Am I right? You catching
Tomorrow.
a plane?
We're heading back to
tomorrow.
Guatemala City today, and then
Okay.
flying back to Los Angeles, the wonderful LAX airport tomorrow. If there's no cancellations with all the strikes.
I have no idea whether it's a wonderful airport or not. I don't know whether you're being
It
sarcastic.
is madness, but it's
okay.
it gets the job done.
If we said that in the UK, it would definitely be sarcastic, but I didn't know maybe it was
that's
real.
us, of course.
Oh, so you're heading back to LA tomorrow. Well, thanks so much for joining us from Guatemala. That's amazing. And I enjoyed the bird song in the background. I was thinking about what you said about how we associate our people with creatures and animals and birds that come back. In the UK, there's a really strong folk tradition around robins that's endured.
Robins, really?
If you speak to anyone now, the robin will always be the person. Yeah, it's really, really interesting because apparently it goes back a very long way. And every country has its own little motif. It's really
I find that so
really
fascinating.
Yeah,
it's very beautiful. Yeah.
I better let you go because we'll be here all day otherwise. But I'm so grateful and so touched and moved by what you're doing. Keep at it. I will be there. I will be in my pajamas with my cup of tea listening. So everybody do come and listen because this is really precious work and very countercultural and exactly what we need. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'll have a chat with you afterwards. Bye, everybody.